Hello and welcome. I am the Restless Kaiser.
And I'm Johnny B.
I'm Woolly Mike.
And I'm Skarnir.
But together we are
Modeling for Advantage. Beautiful sound. Welcome, one and all. Paul Parker was here at 6:10, mate. 3 hours early.
Whoa.
Probably to say he can't join us. Rosie was in earlier. Rich John is here. Nick from Team Clueless Games. Hello there. Brush and Quill. Jello. Interesting. Josh Wood. Saffron69. Some of our magnificent members. And there is Tony Holton. Good evening, one and all. So, modeling tonight then. I am going to build some MDF kits. This Tabletop Scenics cottage, which is very cheap. It's about £5. And this little woodshed that I picked up at Selwig at the weekend. More on Selwig later, probably.
Sweet.
John?
Sweet. I'm going to plink around with some of the Romans that we need. Or I need, rather. For the SPQR. So I've got that and something and some other things. I don't know if the video's been released yet, so I can't show you them. Wooly, what are you up to, sir?
I'm flocking my rocking tonight. I've made some plaster cast rocks. So I'm flocking them and also working through my jungle trees for island assault. So flocking these as well.
Very nice indeed.
Find that. Skarnir, you got anything on the table, sir?
I have some, some very small Battletech hovercraft. I'm going to be putting a wash on. I'm building a generic sort of planetary defense force that can be used in, scenarios for me mates to fight against. So there's a lot of hovercraft and tanks and stuff. I'm going to throw some filet model wash on them.
Oh, I've not seen that one.
Oh, yeah.
Not seen that one, sir.
Great stuff.
Is that their null?
Is it better than Agrax?
It's very close to whatever their green one is called, the Thonian Camo Shade, I think GW's one is called.
Right.
And it's considerably cheaper, so win-win.
For the win. Right, before we get into the meat and tatties of tonight, Mr. Skarnir, can you tell our lovely viewers who you are and what you dare do on their YouTube? If you are on YouTube.
What's the crack? I'm Skarnir or Dwayne, depending on how you know me. I run the Plastic Crack Gaming YouTube channel. I do a bit of 40k stuff. Primarily, I used to do 40k stuff, but I'm leaning more into Battletech as of late. So there's a mixed bag about them. Generally, I do like a fair few hobby hangouts, so like Sundays sort of things, streams, sit down and get stuff painted. And I do a show with 6+Stevo, who's a 40k orc player. We do a show called The Two Bald Knobs. I do a show with, aptly named as you can tell, I do a show with Dreadwell Gaming, another orky channel, and the Hobby Git, which is a hobby channel with 6+Stevo as well. The four of us together are the war bosses of the Apocalypse. You can find that on the War Bosses channel. That's start of every month. It's orky centric. We do that as well. So I do keep myself busy, as you can tell. Whenever I'm not watching modeling for advantage
of course
videos. Of course.
And you mentioned, so your YouTube channel, just for anyone that needs to find it, it's not called Skarnir, it's called Plastic Crack Gaming.
Plastic Crack Gaming, and it's the Irish crack, not the English one. So it's CRAIC. So Plastic Crack Gaming.
Yeah, so the C from plastic is the C in crack.
Yes. Yeah. You know what I mean? I was trying to be a smart arse there.
Yeah. I see that. It's pro move.
See what you did there. Oh, very, very nice.
Very nice, yeah. Other people have joined since we have G, the Hyper Sapien. Hello there.
Hey, G, what's the crack?
Howdy. Is Scarlet the Doctor's Mad Dog? Oh, because of the blue background.
The blue background. Mate, if your doctors looks like this, like fair play to them, like.
Mini Warmer. Hello, I finally catch a live feed. Woohoo! Welcome, Mini Warmer's going to join us in a couple of weeks. Love those trees. I missed that. Who was showing trees off?
Wooly was.
Wooly was, yeah. All right. Rich on are making MDF ruins, but they come in big loose bundles with no instructions, but they were cheap. I've had a few of them off the internet as well, mate. Yeah. Sometimes cheap is what you need. House of Hengist Comics is going to join us next week on the live show. Talk more about his East Africa campaign, World War II. Orky Dude Skarnir, the beautiful Orky Dude. Look at that. You're the bunny one, mate, obviously.
Yeah.
The 4 Orc War bosses, the Orkopolis. Well, if you've done a YouTube build on those trees, interesting.
No, but there are photos in the
Facebook group.
Yeah. So
yeah. So if you've not seen Modeling for Vantage Facebook page, that's kind of one direction conversation. You can't really contribute to that unless we put a post up. You can comment on it. There is also a group where you can share your work, which is fundamentally what it's for, really. The Facebook page is more about news and so forth. G the Hypersapien says, "Wow, recognizing Skarnir's pedigree. Tabletop Generals. Hello, everyone. Great show, Mr. Kaiser." Well, thank you. I mean, if it's great so far, and we've not even started, right? Valea washes on. Nice battle, nice John. 2 Bald Knobs. What a great name. Absolutely. Skarnir was saying he's been enjoying our SPQ. I think the Orc players like the silly names, right?
Yeah, it's
Much love for Skarnir. 2 Bald Knobs is brilliant. I enjoy the show. I enjoy that. Is it still podcast format, or do you show your beautiful selves now?
Look, it's God knows at this stage. You know what I mean? It sort of has a life of its own. Whether initially it was like, well, we'll just do audio only, and then it sort of chops and changes depending on the weather and their mood, I suppose. You know what I mean? You don't know. We keep you on your toes.
So that's that. Right. What were we going to talk about then? We were going to talk about, before we get into this too much, we went to Selwyn at the weekend, didn't we, John?
We did. That is a true fact. First time for me.
So I've not been while it's moved to North London. It's a Southeast London War Game Society. It's moved to North London, which threw me a little bit. We had a bit of a look around. It threw me. I haven't been for quite a few years, but I thought it was a little big show, but I think it was more of a big little show. And what I mean by that, it was more like it was a really good sort of regional show, rather than kind of one of the, like, you know, Salute and so forth scale, because a lot of the big manufacturers weren't there, which surprised me a little bit, considering it was in London.
That's very true. There was only a handful of the big names, and even then they didn't seem particularly well represented.
I think a lot of them were at Frankfurt at the game show, right?
Yes. Yeah. Essen or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
That coincided. So we had the C team of Warlord were there, and
it was the guy we met when we went to Warlord's Open Day who was doing the make a model.
That's right, and he's a freelance kind of dude, isn't he?
Yeah. He was a nice chap. We did pick up some things there, didn't we, John? What did you pick up, mate?
I picked up a lot of random stuff. Crooked Dice were there. I quite like their miniatures. So I picked up a few from their Colony 87 range, which is just generic sci-fi civilians and bits and bobs, 28 mil. They've got their 4th wave Kickstarter actually on at the moment. It's doing quite well. And there's some really cool, funky little dudes in there, proper like retro sci-fi. When I say retro, I mean specifically sort of Rogue Trader. Very similar to that. Anyway, I plugged a few gaps in my collection. And what else did I buy? The most stupid purchase that I did is I saw this, I can't pronounce it, Stoesies Heroes. It's a 28mm dude, and it's General Roy Urquhart.
Sean Connery, mate.
Sean Connery, yeah. And I got home and I was like, I'm glad I got that. And then I looked on my desk of opportunity and saw that I already had one, but from Warlord, which Willie Mike gifted me, with the other 2 characters as well.
Your movie set I brought you, yeah.
So I feel like an idiot there. That was a 5 or worse.
What I got, and this is
least you've got a painting guy for it now on the front.
Well, yeah, true. This is true. So that's what I got. But Kaiser got something interesting.
Well, I got this which I'm still putting together, this little woodshed in MDF just for bolt action. We're often, because of the terrain that we've got, it's kind of countryside, and random buildings are important in the game, but they're also often a bit weird. Why is there just a cottage here and another cottage on the other side of the road? So things like this, I think, provide kind of a little woodshed could be anywhere, right? Which is why I wanted it. We also picked up 1914,
a shiny thing
by Great Escape Games. We had a bit of a chat with them. They gave us a couple sets of rules, and we bought the figures. So that is 12 mil World War One, 1914. My first love is the First World War, and they specifically say in 1914. This is pre-trench warfare. This is still armies, professional armies, fighting a war of maneuver. It will all end in about November when the bad weather sets in, and they dig in over winter and stay dug in for the next 4 years nearly. But yeah,
I've got a different version of similar set. It's called Crush the Kaiser. It's the same sort of like time period, but that was for 10 mil.
Well, these are 12 mil, and when Skarnir is chatting, I'll get some out because I'm really impressed with the sculpts. If you had a chance to have a look at yours yet, John?
I had a look.
The British, I got the German.
You bought them. I just took them home, and they're sitting on a shelf over there. But yeah, they're very clean. They're very crisp considering
for 12 mil metal. Yeah.
I had a handful of potato men,
but they're not all beautiful.
Can't avoid that. Just pinprick eyes and a little like smiley face drawn on it. But yeah, really good quality for the scale.
Right. Salute is the major training show. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, mate. I know that. Remember to like. Yes, click the like button. And join the Facebook groups if you're interested. Gamers with Coffee is here, backing the current Kickstarter, John. Crooked
I will be. It's the 1 week in, so there's another like 2 weeks left. And they've already made 20 odd grand. Well, not made, but pledged 20 odd grand. So it's opened up quite a bit. Yeah, go check it out. Crooked Dice, Colony 87. Some fun little miniatures there. It's good. I didn't answer the question. I haven't backed it yet, no, but I am gonna likely.
Yeah, TT Combat. Yeah, this woodshed is not TT Combat. It's War Bases, but this was TT Combat, and this is very cheap. This was a $5, I think. From a third party. They say a 1914 soldier wouldn't have felt out of place in 1814. Well, he had a magazine-fed rifle, so he probably did. But yeah. And the tactics haven't changed radically. I'm going to head off to bed, lads. Oh, boo! Boo! Now then. Thank you for joining us. Australian time zones, yeah. Burst out a few TT Combat Wild West buildings for a fistful of lead. I mean, if you bought TT Combat when it was like early and really cheap, they did a few really cheap kits. You look at some of their more recent stuff; they've really, really upped their quality. But of course, as part of that, they've upped their cost, right? They're not. Their cheap, simple sets are still available as cheap, simple sets, but they do some great new stuff. This, by the way, because it was mentioned last week, I think is essentially the same system as 7 Days to the River Rhine, which somebody was talking about last time. Right, let's not waste the fact that we have got a magnificent guest here in the form of Skarnir, who can tell us all about Battletech. So, Skarnir, a lot of us have been exposed to Battletechs, giant robots hitting each other. It's been around for, 40 years? Something like that? 30 years? A lot of lore.
It's been around longer than me.
Yeah, so tell us...
I played it as a youngster, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of us haven't got back into it. A lot of us haven't a resurgence. Tell us a bit about the history of it, a bit of the lore.
What little I do know about it. It's like it originally was like back in the early 80s. It came out. So the initial stages of the lore talk about like the year 2005 and all this type of stuff. So it's kind of
yeah.
It's sort of like an alternate history at this stage in that regard.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny. Like so the timelines for them, it starts off like Star League era. That's sort of there's different eras. That's why I kind of got into it. I knew about Battletech. I'll tell you a little bit about me and Battletech. So I knew about Battletech in the early 2000s. I think was when I was kind of introduced to it, and I tried it out. But the only miniatures you could get your hands on at the time were these bios here, the metal ones. And they were pretty hard to come by in Ireland. I'm in Ireland. So they weren't exactly cheap and they were hard to come by. And I wasn't too enamored with a lot of the sculpts. So I always really enjoyed the rule set for Battletech, the lore as well. I like the aspect that there's different ages for it. So it's kind of like, it's a science fiction game, but it has elements of what a historical war game would have. So you can pick your different eras. There will be different equipment available upon those eras as technology waxes and wanes. So, initially there's kind of like the Star League era, which would be like the golden era for the start of the game. And then there's a civil war if you're coming from 40k or the like, kind of something like, the Horus Heresy. You know what I mean? There's like, they're all, they take over the area of the galaxy they're in. So it's all based off of, there's Terra in the middle, and then there's what's called the area of influence. Directly around it is the inner sphere. Anything outside of that is called the periphery. And then, in later eras, you'll find out about more areas and they have their specific names. But there's like an Amaris Civil War. So there's a civil war where, it's plunged into madness, destruction, and then there's a decline of technology as the guys who were the defenders of what was called the Star League, they all bugger off after the Civil War, and there's 5 grey houses at that period of time in the game, and they all decide they want to be the big cheese. So it kicks off the first of 4 succession wars. So there's several wars. Technology gets ground down over the years, as there's like 250 years plus. The first couple of wars, everyone's throwing nukes around left, right, and center, and then they're like, maybe it's not a great idea to destroy all the sustainable factories. Yeah, so there's a massive decline in technology, and they're still able to keep mechs, but they're more advanced technology that they'd have in systems like advanced targeting computers or very efficient weapons or engines, you know what I mean, that don't generate as much heat. A lot of that type of stuff gets lost. So there's this element when you're starting in Battletech, where they tend to start you off is in the succession wars, is about the 30-25 era. So there's been 3 succession wars. A lot of technology has declined, and there's that sort of vibe that you get with 40k as well. I know the lore's changed on 40k, but it's very sort of a, the golden era was previous, and you can find technology caches and that sort of thing. When you're starting off in the game and you're playing like the beginner box set or the Game of Armored Combat, they would be the sort of box sets that you'd start playing the game with, that they're in for. That's the era you start off with. There are later eras then. You find out what happens with all those guys who buggered off, that were the Star League Defense Force, who won the Civil War and decided to leave instead of, perpetuating the infighting that was in the inner sphere. They come back, and then you find out there's a whole thing that went on for like 250 years where they went off and founded their own society. They're the clanners, so they have their own sort of they've created their own society.
That's who the clans are.
That's who the clans are. The clangers. They call them the clangers if you want. They probably do, whistle. But yeah, they come back, and that starts off the clan invasion era. So that kicks off another era. As the eras go on, you know what I mean, you have different bits and pieces playing in. The clans, when they invade, because they left in like the golden era, and their approach to war is different to conventional war that would be like played in the inner sphere. So they have a bidding system to try and mitigate destruction and losses. So they they'll they pretty much like challenge each other. I challenge you for the rights of this planet. I bid my 5 dudes in their mechs. What do you bid? And then they'll bid against each other, and then they have a little battle like that. And then it's like, okay, I've won the rights. So then ownership transfers over. Instead of, I'm going to land all my forces on your planet, we're going to fight, blow up some of the infrastructure, as you would, you would normally do. Their whole society shifted away from that sort of thing because of the Amara Civil War, the destruction they saw in the inner sphere. So their technology level is not only better because they were in the golden era, but they've improved over time. So they come back into this sort of war-torn inner sphere, and they've got all the shinies, like, you know what I mean?
Wow.
Like, they've got new mechs,
range,
got
higher power, better targeting.
Yeah. Oh yeah, better targeting, way better technology, and people are like, oh my God, what's going on here? You know what I mean? So it's pretty interesting in that regard, because
those sound cool.
But they like there's some interesting lore with it as well. Like, there's lore in everything. So like the names of some of the mechs that came in. So there's a mech called the Mad Cat, but it's kind of like, the way in World War II there'd be, troopers would give enemy vehicles their name, but that's not the official title. So it's a case of like the targeting recognition for some of the mechs in the inner sphere when they were fighting these new guys. Their computers didn't know what they were, so it kept, there's a bit of lore with saying it switched between what mech it was. It kept thinking it was a Marauder or a Catapult, so then the pilots themselves called it a Mad Cat.
Yeah.
But obviously the clans themselves have actual names for them, so it's called a Timberwolf in Clan Society. So there's loads of little bits of lore like that I find really interesting. There's like mechs that are, they're not the meta build, they're not the optimum build, but it's like, well, this thing was designed by committee. This machine came into existence because of political shenanigans, backstabbing, blueprints were stolen here, or somebody had a contract right for the part that they want, so they had to invent their own, and it's not quite as good. You know what I mean? There's a lot of that going on. It's not just, everything's the best of the best. It's all, this thing's shit, but it's cheap to make, so we've loads of it,
There's
loads of that.
Is it 97 different locust or something
there's
like
loads.
that?
And there's loads of variants on various vehicles. So
and they do give you the rules for construction. So you can ground up build a mech, but the maths on it gets quite complicated. So,
but that's the beauty of Battletech, I suppose, is it has a very sort of older mentality towards wargaming, I suppose. But it's a more freer. I wouldn't even say older. It's a more freer mentality towards wargaming, where it's, here's the rules. Here are a load of additional rules if you want them. Make the game what you want. Like, they can, they say to you, you can add all the rules in you want, but you'll slow the game down if you add everything in. So it's like, you decide what you want. You want to make your own rules? Go for it. Use the gaming system, create your own mechs, do it. You want to play a campaign? Here's the campaign rules. Here's a whole book of additional opt-in rules that you can, if you want to. You know what I mean? It's very, the approach to the rule set's very refreshing in that game. It's very much, the game is what you want it to be. We don't tell you how to play your game. It's like, we facilitate you playing the game the way you want it with your mates.
It's like with your SPQR, you can put a pilot in, give him a couple of skills and some attributes, and over games he'll gain XP and you can increase the attributes. But you put a really good pilot in an average mech and it increases the value of the mech considerably.
Yeah. So it's like, which would be better if you gave an Imperial Guardsman a bolter, you know what I mean, and it had a base cost. Then if you give it to a Space Marine, using the Battletech sort of rules, the way it works is, the better the skill of the individual wielding the weapon, there's a multiplier. So the system that they use, there's battle value. Everything has battle value. So it's like that. It's like, if you put an ace pilot into something, it's going to shoot up the cost of it. So you can have interesting matches with your mates, where it's like, I've brought these really cheapo, terrible mechs, but there's like ace pilots in them. So they'll shoot your socks off from like 500 yards away. Whereas your mate could be bringing these big lumbering assault mechs, but they have average pilots. So you can, you'll have interesting times with it in that regard. It's very customizable. It is what you want it to be. I do like that. It's mostly aimed towards mechs, but the rules facilitate everything. Like I've infantry here. I've little 6mm infantry. It's the first time I sort of painted the infantry. They're tiny, but they come on stands, so you can have, you know what I mean. It's a combined arms rule set if you wanted to be.
Wow.
You know, and I have my hovercraft transports, and I've hovercraft assault vehicles, and I've tanks, and you can get it's a whole rule set. It's not just about mix. You can literally, if you want to, the rules exist where you can bring your ships in. So obviously there's jump ships.
Drop ships and stuff.
You'll bring your jump ships in, your drop ships will detach. You can have your space battle. Then you can literally come down onto the planet. And there's the rule sets scale. So there's different rule books depending on how big you want to play. So if you want to play interplanetary wars where you're taking over space sectors using, unit tokens or whatever, you can. And it goes right down to individual mech warrior, down the layers, right down to the role-playing books. They facilitate play across the board. So you can upscale the game, you can downscale the game. There's a lot of potential for what you want. It really is what you want to do with it. That's what I really enjoy about it.
That sounds like a beautiful game. So whatever you want it to be.
Really
so
is.
I want to just check. There was, I had a quick sort of watching somebody's video about the law. So in the kind of Battletech future that we got, there is still something important about terror, isn't there? And I forget what is it like. It controls communication or space travel or something. For some reason, it still exists semi-independent.
Yeah. So the Terra was kind of in the Succession Wars era. Terra is independent, because it's the seat of it's the seat of Comstar, which are pretty much the telecommunications. They're in charge of the communication hubs across the universe, so they control that, and they control the currency as well. So they're very sort of cloaking. They're kind of like the Inquisition and like the Adeptus Mechanicus sort of mixed together. If you're trying to think from like a 40k,
or if you know your Dune, it's like the Spacers Guild.
Yeah. There's be like spacers. They control. They've got a lot of cloak and dagger stuff going on. They know what everyone's doing and all this type of stuff. So there's a lot of espionage going on. They try and make sure
the book's been written on it as well in the background.
Yeah, it depends on the period of time that there's different stuff going on, and then in and of themselves, they have their own internal factions. So there's a whole era after the clan invasion. There's like the Civil War. So two of the main factions come together, create a superpower. Then that inevitably collapses into a civil war. And then after that, there's the Jihad era, which is Comstar has sort of fanatics within its midst, and they take over. And then it starts, another crazy nuclear shit show as you do. And it goes like literally like there's a symbol for each of the eras, and the symbol for the Jihad era is a mushroom cloud. Like they give them out like free candy. They really do. Then there's a decline in technology, the Dark Age, and then we get to the era we're at now, where it's the Ill Clan, where the clans. So it's literally like the lore is still progressive to this day. So I've only started reading this myself, but this is the clans. Pretty much their whole point of invading the inner sphere is so that they can sort of take back Terra, because it's sort of a symbolic thing for them. They want to found the Star League again anew and bring back the sort of the ideals and whatever else. And this is the whole culture is based on that. But even in and of that self, not all of the clans think the same way. There's factions and schisms within. There's clans here, who are Crusader clans who want to go back in and invade, and then there's Warden clan. Like, it's an onion with layers upon layers. No matter what faction you look at, you'll find internal politics within. There's lots of lore, loads of books, who's fighting against who. You know what I mean? Even just within the faction themselves, let alone faction against faction and what their motives are. And there's a lot going on. There is a lot, but it's not too hard to get into. I know getting into it initially, you're like, well, what do I buy first? It's you're given a little bit of lore and a primer to start you off with the beginner box set, a game of armored combat, and you go from there.
Sweet. Sweet.
Right. Well, you have sent us some pictures, and there's not loads, so I think we'll.
Yeah, I'm not a quick painter.
But it gives us something to talk about for anyone that hasn't seen these in a lot of years. So if I share the screen, here we go, and I'll just catch up on the comments, and then we'll go through these if that's all right. So Beecher 2 is a great show in Bournemouth. Yeah, I mean that's a bit further away from us. They let you in to sell me dressed like that. They certainly did. Yeah, yeah. Abstract reignited my getting into Battletech. We'll come to that in a minute. Did anyone guess what I was making? Alid sent Rosie a unique commission. She put up, guess what it was? History of Battletech, mate. Yeah. The law sounds amazing. Claners are Kerenskis, Starleaguers. Yeah.
That's how they see themselves, anyway.
Received a few weeks in reference to the potato face. We were a bit harsh on our Flames of War miniature, which was a bit fun. Catch you in the rerun. Boom. All right, mate. Like games where they state the designation is the human one. Then I'll come back to that. Customizable rules. I mean, it's got a little bit of the advanced squad leader problem, hasn't it? Battletech in it. There are as many rule supplements as you could possibly imagine. Because
there's a lot of bolt-on stuff.
Radically. Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's like a salad, mate. If you keep adding vegetables, it'll be like, it'll be a mega salad. But good luck to finding what you want in it.
There is an RPG version called Mech Warrior. I think it's by the same people, where you do more with regards to the actual pilot than fighting on large numbers of mechs.
Down to where it's there's two of them. I think there's Mech Warrior Destiny, and there's a Time of War, I think, is the other one. There's a couple of them.
So Tony's just mentioned that about new plastic. Are these the new?
These are new plastics. This is the Thunderbolt mech. So they're single pose miniatures. This miniature comes in the Game of Armored Combat box set. So it's one of the heavy mechs that you get in the Game of Armored Combat box set. And it's literally the same. Now, they're not styrene plastic or whatever the GW stuff is. It's kind of like, it's a hardened plastic, but it's kind of a bit of flex to it. If I was to bend it or if I was to drop it, it won't shatter. It's that kind of plastic. But they're grand. The detail on them is grand. And it's two the same mech. It's a Thunderbolt. So I've made up, the one on the left is a mercenary unit I made up myself, and then the one on the right is just sort of a generic US olive drab with a wash as a generic up for planetary defense force. Very generic.
It's generic. And
generic.
Why have you painted the front of it? Is that for facing? Is that?
Yeah, that's the facing. That's the front facing. So because it's played on, the classic one is played on a hex grid. The front facing and facing plays a key role in regards to firing arcs for weapons and also incoming damage, and cross-referencing your charts to see what location you hit when you roll to hit. Alpha Strike, which is the other game we mentioned, doesn't use grid maps and is designed for bigger scale kind of play. So typically when I play classic Battletech, you can call it, or is it Battletech, we play with four mechs against 4 usually, which is lance against lance, and you'll probably get 3 hours or so play of it, depending on the skill levels. There's a lot of factors that'll affect how long a game takes, and the more points and the better the skill of your pilot, the easier they can hit, and the more damage you'll do, quicker. So games tend to not last as long when you've higher pilots, whereas if you've really terrible pilots,
as you scale up, the games get quicker. That's
if you use in regards to points, you can. But if you field a load of cheap, terrible units, you'll slow the game down in that regard. You know what I mean? So, and then it technology base as well affects the length of the game. So many of the advanced tech, like you'll have bonuses to hit, so it's really easy to hit each other, and you'll do more damage with higher tech weapons. So higher tech games tend to go a bit quicker as well. But then
if you take a lot of scouts, it gets tougher as well, because the faster the move, a bit like in the tanks game, the faster the target moves, the harder they are to hit,
difficult.
and the faster you move, the more penalties you receive. So
yeah,
you know, the heavy slow mechs, they're always just going to slug it out, but the small fast ones, it's going to be a sort of like a chase around the board game sometimes.
Yeah, and then there's factors built into the game as well, where there's random chances for critical hits. So, you know, some of our cousins across the pond call it the golden BB effect, where you might hit a mech and then clip an ammo bin, and you know it just goes up like a Roman candle. You know what I mean?
What, the whole thing?
Oh yeah. In some of the earlier eras, there's no protection against ammo explosion. So if you hit an ammo rack, like it's dead. It explodes. It receives the amount of damage that is remaining in the ammo bin. And,
You
know, so if you've got 10 heavy missiles that do like 20 damage each, that's 200 damage it's dealt with on your mech.
Yeah, it'll cook off. Yeah, and ammo is loaded per the ton, so like 9 times out of 10, it's like unless you've run the ammo bin down, it's gone. But I enjoy that about it. Like I really do. It's you know, you're marking
the
off.
damage technique is if you hit a leg that's already damaged, then the damage moves slowly in towards the center torso, and then once you blow up the center torso, the mech's dead. So and then you hope your pilot ejects.
But this is it, and then there's rules for that, so you can to speed up the game again. There's rules called forced withdrawal, where if your mech is damaged to a certain point, that you're forced to withdraw off the battlefield to sort of represent that not everyone is gonna be a diehard fanatic and fight to the end. You know what I mean? There is sort of Ferric victory type of thing. Yeah. You know, there's that element to it as well, especially if you're playing in a campaign and such. You know what I mean? You're only going to fight to a certain amount and cut your losses and withdraw at that stage. You know what I mean? Go off, repair, refit.
It's normally once you lose a certain number of troops and that you roll a will to fight or whatever you call it. With this, it's the once you reach a certain point on the mech damage, then they've got to move.
Bargain out, better to run away and come back and fight another day. So these wonderful plastic ones that you're showing us here, Skarnir, are they readily available? Because they're from Catalyst Games, right?
They are from Catalyst Games. There's this, they've recently they've been suffering from issues in regards to shipments, but there's a whole wave of stuff coming in at the moment. I don't know what happened. It's like all of a sudden everyone and their cousin is trying to get hands on Battletech box sets. So I think it's a combination of factors. It's kind of like the plague affecting shipping and production, then all of a sudden a massive surge, and then their Kickstarter that they're only fulfilling. So the Kickstarter was in 2019, and I've only just today and 2 days ago got my final shipping notices for my final Kickstarter stuff to come in. But that was to be expected. Like that was, that's along the timeline that we're expecting. So I've no gripe in that regard. But yeah, it's just like it can be a bit hard, but they are cropping up in the wild. Catalyst themselves only have a US-based store, but I've heard through the grapevine that they're going to be hopefully setting up something in regards to EU distribution and the rest.
This is good.
So it should be easy to get your hands on it. But there's it's getting out there. The stock's getting out there. The problem is it's being hoovered up so quickly.
You can still get the original Ralpartha metals on eBay, and there are people that do
Ralpartha UK as well. You can. Some of the metals. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can get them in Ralpartha UK.
But the problem is, let's face it, they're quite dated now.
That's like
they really do look a bit odd.
Like these mechs we're looking at now, these are the new plastics, and what they did in regards to this is what brought me back into the game and piqued me interest was I hate playing 40k. I literally hate the rule set. I despise it with a vengeance at this point. You know what I mean? It's just I can't stand playing 40k unless it's with me mates and I'm gonna have a laugh. Like we could be be kicking hot turds around the yard and we'll have a laugh. You know what I mean? It doesn't bother me. That's the bar. That's the level of the bar in regards to 40k. But this whole new generation of plastic sculpts that they're doing, they're re-sculpting. They're all one-piece miniatures, but if you want to take a scalpel blade to them and repose them, it's pretty straightforward and easy to do. And they've been kind of designing a lot of the mechs in that regard to make it easy for you to do that. Like, this is what brought me back into it. Like I said, I heard of the game. I was interested to dabble a little bit in the early 2000s, but a lot of the Real Party sculpts, man, yeah, they're like, if you look at when the original sculpts was from the 80s or whatever, and they're still using a lot of them. There have been resculpts since, but I'm not a massive fan of them. These new plastics they've brought a shed load of interest in. You know what I mean? A lot of people really love them, myself included. And that's what
you've got to remember. Back in the 80s, it was either using cardboard printed ones or getting the Real Party. So I've got an affinity with the old Real Party stuff.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, yeah. No, it has a place on the table. And that's the beauty of Battletech is you can still use those mechs from early 80s and they're perfectly legal and there's absolutely no issue. And there is in-law reasons why there would be difference between the units because that many different factions would have so many different factories producing them. You're not just going to get one type. You know what I mean? It's like AK-47s. It's like the Chinese make them, the Russians make them. They all kind of look the same, but if you know what you're looking at, there'll be some differences. You know what I mean? So it's not an issue in that regard at all.
No.
Off-the-shelf chassis and everything else is bolted on.
But some of the kits are literally sold like that. If you read the lore, I think it was my friend was showing me like a boat. It's in one of the books, and it's literally, you know, the lore says that they sell you the boat, but you have to assemble it yourself. It's kind of like a flat pack boat, you know. It's like they give you the gun mount and whatever, but you have to build it yourself, sort of. So it's really fun in that regard. There's like some books are just about lore. So like when I was talking about this Ill Clan, this is a source book. So this book will have a few different bits and pieces in it. It's a lot of there's a lot of lore in it, so it'll give you like if they're written like they remind me of kind of like old historical war books. Like they'll give you a play-by-play. Like on day 3, this battle happened. On day 4, that battle happened, and it composed of this force, who the commander was, the average experience, force composition, where they deployed, the deployment sites, the status. You know, so like the 32nd Republic Militia, it's saying their status 90% losses, unit disbanded after the battle. You know what I mean? It'll go through.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And they give you a lot. Like here's a T plus 49 to T. So 49 days to day 53 is the battle for Geneva, and it shows you like the unit movements and stuff like. So they're written up like really well. It tells you about the commanders, the maneuvers and stuff. It really is like a sort of alternate history type of game, and then you'll get rules then as well. So if they introduce anything new, so if there's new mechs, so in the same source book, there's new mechs, they'll show you the new mechs. They'll give you the sheets to play with them. You know what I mean? Like there may not be miniatures for these guys yet, but there's nothing wrong with your proxy and stuff, and it's very friendly in that regard. Battletech, the culture of the game itself, it's not overtly WYSIWYG. It's a case of as long as you have the right sheets for your units to play and you tell people what they are, there's generally not an issue. As he was saying, like cardboard standees, when you buy the box set, it comes with, you'll get 8 mechs, but it'll give you extra cardboard standees so you can literally try and get as many mechs under the table. So there's no issues in that regard either. That's another bonus to it.
Because another thing we do is there is actually apps available where that you can call up the sheets from their database and actually annotate them on an app, so you're not printing out a sheet for every mech or laminating it or that. But also with the rule books, when you come to a section where they introduce a new rule, there's normally a little short story with a little bit of lore and a little bit of background to the use of the rules. So you read the little story and then you read the rules and it makes a bit more sense. So
that sounds pretty cool.
They add colour to it quite a bit.
Yeah, that's really good. And look at these bad boys here. Look, they've got a Marauder and Commando.
There you go.
And some little dude bros.
Infantry, aren't they?
Some infantry, yeah. Yeah, it's the first time I've ever come across 6mm infantry. I went into nearly all the model shops here in Dublin asking them, have you got any 6mm infantry? And they're like, no 6mm. I didn't realise like 6mm infantry were, that hard to come by, but I managed to get my hands on some, and I painted them up a little bit, and it's been an experience, like painting miniatures on strips beforehand and then gluing them onto a base and then having to put the base filler in.
I've got 2 whole forces of American Civil War for Gettysburg in 6mm.
I enjoyed it. Like I really enjoyed it. I was told not to.
The is a bit difficult though.
Yeah, I was told not to go too crazy on the details, so I was like, right, I'll just do like US olive drab, a wash. I'll pick out the visor in gold, make the weapon metal, and paint their boots black, and away you go. I thought, that would probably be enough for the eye to pick up, and they seem decent enough.
These look like the same guys, the old FASA.
These are the old FASA.
I remember painting blue visors on mine, like when I was 30 years ago.
You can still get these guys off of Rail Party UK. These were donated to me by a veteran Battletech player, Lorcan, because I was looking for infantry for a planetary defense force, and he's like, "Here, there you go." You know what I mean? So there's like platoons of them or battalions. I don't know the terminology. There's loads of loads.
Pretty damn cool. So for anybody, you've seen the miniatures. It's beautiful. It's a game that's got a lot of interest. It's not just giant robots punching each other and jumping off buildings. That is a big part of the appeal of this game.
That is part of it.
But there is a whole combined arms. There's even an aerospace component, isn't there?
Yeah.
You mentioned the drop ships and jump ships earlier. I mean, these things are absolutely enormous, right? These things drop groups of mechs.
I've got a 3D printed spheroid dropship that drops in 5 full battle mechs. And the scenarios around that landing and taking off, it's got to land. You've got to dismount your mechs, get to the target, and then get them back on board before the enemy mechs arrive and do their. So
it's crazy.
And there are stats, weapon loadouts, cargo holds. Like there are sheets to play with the dropships as well.
The game's been out long enough. All of that stuff is. Yeah,
it's hashed itself out, and then there's, it changes between. So like, there's the tabletop system, there's rules for them, and that, and then there's sort of an upscaled.
You've got the ground, the aerospace, the inner atmosphere, the outer atmosphere, and then deep space, and you could play all of that as a, sort of like a basis into the scenario or out of it.
Mm-hmm. All right, we've only got just over 10 minutes left, guys. So I'm gonna try and condense the remaining things that we might want to talk about. So first of all, this is a classic BattleTech game. If anybody played it years ago, it will be a fundamentally familiar system, right? You still move around on hexes with movement points. You roll to hit. You roll 2d6 for a hit location. You chalk damage off a stat sheet. That kind of stuff is still very similar. Although the tables might have moved on a bit. The miniatures are obviously much nicer, especially these new plastics. They come in lances, as I understand it. You buy a pack of 4 mechs for like
4 or 5, depending on the.
And are you committed to fielding that lance like that?
No,
you can chop and change it as you want.
Right.
You don't have to just stick to that. And there's
the starter box comes with 8 mechs, and you can mix them around and then add or take away. You get the crossover between the clans and the inner sphere because there's a slight difference in the weapons. So, you start off with the clans having the better stuff. But as was said, as time moves on, the inner sphere starts adopting these weapons as well. So you can start using clan mechs for the inner spheres and vice versa.
But Battlefield Savage is a big part of the game. So it's like nobody ends up having one special toy to themselves for long, you know what I mean?
Right. So, and there's 2 starter sets, and there's also 2 versions of the game currently being played, right? So there's a starter set, I can't like recruit or something it's called.
There's a beginner's set,
and that's just got 2 mechs in it, and it's about 20 quid. But it's got enough rules to get you going. The reason
everything to play,
was if you just want to try it, because you remember it is very much the game you might remember, and it is still quite clunky. I've had a look at it and a bit of a play around. It's not for everyone. That's a great way of testing the water. I think it's very low cost, and you get a couple of nice mechs out of it. But then there's a bigger starter set, the Battletech, the Game of Armored Combat or something, which is more like 50, 60 quid. and that's
Yeah,
got 8
about
mechs in it.
Let's come to the 8. Yes.
I think the beginner box set is sort of aimed at people who've never wargamed before, really.
Right.
They have some simplified sheets, but it'll give you the general gist of it. Whereas the Gamer of Armored Combat, I think, would be the sort of the box set that if you've either played Battletech before or you've wargamed in general, that would be the box set to go for in that regard. Yeah.
I found I got that basic set and I was like, this tells me whether I actually want to get heavily invested.
Well, but yeah, both will do the same. But I really feel like the beginner box set is really sort of beginner.
Yeah. It was the price point, really. 60 quid a lot
after the
to
main
try
box set,
again.
there is another
Yeah,
box
that's
set,
true.
which
It's
is called
true.
Clan
Fair
Wars,
point.
which introduces the clans and another 8 mechs.
Right.
There's 5. There's a Clan Invasion box set that comes with 5 mechs and 2 points of elementals.
Sorry, yes, it's 5 and 2, and then you buy the various ready-made lancers in boxes of 5.
Yes, you'll buy your box sets, and it'll be like, here's your 5 mechs you need for your force, and it's like 30 quid or whatever. Or here's your box set, and it's 4. You know what I mean?
Rosie has
You
been
need to improve
asking
your
me
magic show, John.
a dice bag, and John is showing me.
There's no rabbit.
And there's also a version of the game which is called Alpha Strike, which is played quite differently. And if I can, as I understand it, it's a much more fast play version of the game where facing, hit location, that kind of stuff is much more simplified.
Yeah, it's more. It'll be like your mech has 8 points of armor, and it has like 5 points of internal, and it'll deal like, I think the range brackets are like 0 to 6 inches is like short, 6 to 12 is medium, and 12 to 18 or 24. I can't remember off the top of my head. I've only played it once, but it's very much, these are your ranges. You deal this much damage that far out. Do you hit? Yes or no? Yeah, you hit. You deal that much damage, and it's reduced down in regards to that aspect of it. But that, it plays quicker, so it allows you to feel more. So whereas typically,
he said inches there. You're free from the hex map.
Instead of having the big A4 sheet that you've got to fill in, they just come through with little playing cards, double-sided playing cards with the info on.
Yeah, they're only small cards. Like, you don't have big mech sheets. It's just and they come in the box sets as well, by the way.
Yeah.
Is the game of Armored Combat, the 60 quid start set or whatever, does that include rules to play Alpha Strike, or do you need
that includes the cards to play Alpha Strike? From what I remember, you can get the now, don't quote me off this because I haven't bothered to dig that far into it myself for Alpha Strike, but I think you can get the basic rules of Alpha Strike off of Catalyst themselves.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I think there's a free to download PDF starter.
Yeah.
But not tried it myself. I prefer the hex.
I bought the Alpha Strike rulebook. That's why I didn't go digging for it. But I believe there's free maps on their website. There's some free lore on their website as well. There's loads of bits and pieces if you go digging. They've like a World War II sort of scenario thing where they made a lot of World War II vehicles using their game mechanics. So they all have hit points and stuff. You'll find that on there for free.
Right then, just so he's not. Is that still working? Yeah. John's been left out. We've got about 7 minutes to go. So, John, what are we looking at here, mate?
Oh, mate, I'm okay being left out because there's been other stuff. This is so about a month ago. If you go all the way back in the live shows, I started painting an additional 5 commandos, my Britishers in bolt action. I finally completed something, which is these 5, which you will see in quick succession, plus a Peart team.
Jimmy.
Oosh.
Ginger.
Got Ginger, Peart team. Oosh. And there you go.
Boom.
So I completed something. Just to prove that I can paint.
So now you've got 1.5 sections, right? Towards
now I've got 1.5 sections. Just another
3 sections to go, and you'll be there. Yeah. But we've not seen some bolt action for a while. Somebody asked earlier about Plastic Italians. When we went to Warlord, we didn't have a good look at the sprue, and I haven't got any yet. Other people have covered that really well. I'm not saying I'm not answering the question. I'm saying I'm not qualified to. They look nice from what I saw. I really like the fact that you can make them into black shirts, which are like their political troops. Really, they're like the very early, the SS Topperbander units, they're not well equipped, but they are politically reliable, and they're an interesting unit type, I think, for the times. But yeah, we are working on some bolt action. We're talking about for the next game. We were going to do literally a war game. We were going to do like a Salisbury Plain thing, weren't we, John?
Yeah, not quite the Battle at the Farm or whatever it was, the Battle of the Cowshed. Not quite like that, but
no, but like an British versus American.
Yeah, in preparation for D-Day, we do a few exercises out in the fields.
You can always do that. The Eagle has landed scenario.
Well, yeah, I guess so. I need a big church though.
Yeah, big church.
I need a big church. And for that, we were thinking about taking a bit of a leaf out of Hengist books, having some cards that allowed, because it was an actual war game rather than a battle, we might allow them to cheat a little bit.
Yay!
Break the rules, claim that they didn't die or whatever. We're still kind of thinking through but just to mix up the basic bolt action rules to allow them to cheat. The Flames of War Learn to Play video series, there'll be another one of those out on Friday for anyone that watched the first one. Also working in behind the scenes with Gimotech, James Green, we started recording the Learn to Play Antares series, Beyond the Gates of Antares. But it's difficult for us to both be available at the same time. So we've got a couple of those, but we've not. I don't want to finish I don't want to release any of them until we've finished the series, which that is working. Brush and Quill says, "I'm not dead." Nice figures on the slideshow. Did you send me some, Brush and Quill? Is that a cheeky, like, I sent you some pictures? If you did, I missed them, mate. Sorry. Hengist is going to be here next week, as I say, so hopefully he's going to take us through his Somaliland World War II campaign. If you remember, some really nice models that he scratch built for the harbour. I'm looking forward to that. Modelling, where do we get up to? I've had quite a productive evening. I have, although it's stuck to a bit of paper, I have finished the woodshed. That's a nice little bit of scenery. Whereas the other house...
Put us back. Let's have a look.
Kaiser. Put us back.
Put us back into the 4 boxes. Get rid of them derpy.
Boom.
Get rid of them.
Right. Yeah, this is a 28mm woodshed. It is about 2 inches by 1.5 inches, but it's a little bit of line of sight blocking scenery, right?
Sweet.
This cottage, the TT combat thing, it's actually a lot more complicated than I thought. You can see, it's got like a porch built on it, and the roof.
But it was cheap.
L-shaped. Mate, it was a $5, but it was just a bit more involved than I was ready for.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, John? Where'd you get up to?
So I've got some silver on my Roman crew that may be for something that's appearing in a battle.
Oh, for your ballista.
Sometime soon. Interesting. Got another hero yet to be named. Penis-like.
How many years he's got on him?
Yes, bunny ears. They're feathers. I'm guessing that's like a Republican Roman helmet.
Asterix the Gold
that he stole from Daddy. What did you do, Wooly? Did you do much?
I was doing before and after of my plaster cast rock.
Which one's the before?
That one. No, sorry, that's wrong hand.
I can't tell which one I did the work
on.
Yeah,
it's the other left, and I've put the first flock on the trees. I'm not one of the tops off, but I've got some brown sort of like leaf litter texture that's going to go on next under where the trees are, and I've got some coconuts to paint and put on as well. Excuse me.
Skarnir, how many did you wash?
I washed, I think, like 5 or 6 very small hover tanks. They're weeny,
but it's cool.
Teeny weeny. Yeah, they're gassed.
Remind these lovely people. They want to see, an Irishman painting some battle mechs on a Sunday evening. Where should they go?
Well, if you want to watch me wash me hovercraft live, you can find me on Plastic Crack Gaming. Yeah, it's on YouTube. I'll give the lads a link or whatever, and you can find me on there. We have if you're into the 40k Orks, we have the 40k Ork community Facebook page. You can jump on there, and we have the 40k Ork community Discord as well. I do pop in there every now and then to torment folk, and yeah, that's where you can find me. And a Facebook page as well. I have a Plastic Crack Game and Facebook page. I keep forgetting about.
Right.
Jesus.
If you're at all interested in Orks, the 40k Ork community Facebook page, there's some great people there. There's a lot, Orks. Because you mentioned earlier, so you hate 40k at the moment. Specifically, you hate the miniatures game as it currently is played. You still love.
Oh no, I still love the whole conversion and creating looted wagons and stuff. I don't hate Orks. Jesus, I could never do that to the poor Orks. Like they wouldn't deserve it.
Yeah,
I'm the same. I was always an Ork player for Warhammer and 40k, and love the Orks, but not the rules anymore.
I think there's a lot of us. John and I are slowly dying inside trying to play it.
I know the feeling, lads. I really do know the feeling.
Looking forward to voting. I assume that's boring people's senses about planning, wargaming, developing, tactical thinking, and assessment. Please pour a large stiff drink beforehand. Later, as you potatoes and the great show. Right? Yeah, Angus is really interested in making wargaming as credible a recreation of the Command experience as you can. It's a very different approach, but he puts a lot of work into his scenery and planning his games. Whereas a couple of dickheads like me and John turn up, roll some dice, and win with maximum 6. That's but I really
preferably with the green dice.
Yeah. Which is the best dice here. I want to use them. That's how I'm going to win. Skarnir, it's been great having you on, mate. It's always good to have you, and we'll try and get you on. I don't know. I was thinking there's a few great YouTubers coming out of Ireland at the moment. Ollie's really doing very well. Have you been following Discourse? She's storming it.
Oh yeah. I've been watching her stuff.
Mostly by slagging off Games Workshop.
Oh yeah, been loving it. I have.
We had her on. No, I don't know whether we can do some kind of, I don't know, Irish YouTubers or something. Get you all on together. And do. Plastic Crack is already taken several times, unfortunately. But yeah, some great stuff coming out of Ireland in the YouTube. If you haven't watched any of those, they're all great people. Thanks everybody for watching. I think any final remarks from anyone? Anyone want to say anything?
Thanks for having me on. It's great crack as always.
Don't listen to Skarnir about kicking hot turds. don't do it.
We let them dry out first. All right.
Parental advisory.
All right. On that note, guys, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye.